program was recorded at RILA's annual logistics conference in Orlando, Florida. I'm pleased to welcome Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Brain, Russell Goodman.
Integrating automation in the DC. Here to speak with us about that is Terry Krantz, Director of Retail Sales at Swisslog. Welcome, Terry.
Thank you, Russell.
Terry, for those viewers that might not be that familiar with Swisslog, give us a brief outline. What does the company do?
Well, simply what Swisslog does is designs and builds automated picking and storage solutions that are tailored towards the warehouses and distribution centers.
Now tell us, over the last couple of years, what kind of trends do you think Swisslog has observed in the retail segment?
Well, I think in the last decade, in the retail segment, there's been an awful lot of capacity in the warehousing and distribution centers added. But that came to a pretty abrupt halt a couple of years ago, as we're all familiar with. And since that time, we found our clients increasingly focused on increasing the efficiencies of the DCs that they actually have. So we've worked quite closely with them to see where our solutions might be able to help them achieve that goal.
Well, let's talk a little bit more concretely about that. Give us an example of how your clients might have reduced their costs or improved efficiencies in their DCs.
Well, one example is I think a lot of retailers have some sort of a cross-docking operation. Typically, this involves some sort of automation with a sorter and conveyor system. This is a very efficient solution for your fast movers and for your cross-dock items. But most retailers also have quite a significant slow-moving or break-pack operation. And while that doesn't really have a lot of the true throughput in terms of case volume, it oftentimes accounts for quite a large percentage of the labor spend within a DC. So what we tried to do is come up with a targeted, specific integrated system that would integrate with what they had and provide those benefits. And really what's key here is a small targeted system. There is not a lot of appetite in today's environment for a large capital outlay, no matter what the return might be. So we tried to focus on keeping that targeted and to a reasonable size and still deliver some of the benefits.
Any other benefits that you can let us in on that your customer realized through the use of the solution? Well,
in this case in particular, what we found was that these slow movers were often touched 6, sometimes 7 times throughout its journey through the DC. By putting this in, we were able to reduce those touches all the way down to 1 or 2. And that, of course, has a direct impact on labor savings, which was the primary driver for justification. Now, it's also maybe interesting to point out that another benefit is that they realized an awful lot of additional capacity. So by putting the system in, you're able to increase the capacity of the building by 15 or 20%. That's not such a big deal in today's environment with such flat sales across retail, but it's not going to be that way forever. So I think this customer will be quite well positioned when the economy does turn around and the buyers start going back out to be able to handle future growth without a lot of capital outlay in the future.
When you're looking at the retail industry and looking at the challenges and the pressures that retailers face, what do you think some of the other benefits are that retailers can realize through use of the kind of automation that we've been talking about here?
That's a good question. I can think of 3 off the top of my head. First is we've heard a lot of the speakers here at RILA this week talk about SKU or item proliferation. There's not really a lot of indications that that's going to slow down anytime soon as retailers continue to more aggressively target subgroups and subsectors to drive more retail sales. That is also going to have its effect on increasing SKUs. Now, what we can do with automation, for example, the example I gave earlier, allows us, we don't care how many items are in it. There could be 3,000 items, there could be 5,000 items. It's as sufficient with one or the other. So automation can really help you handle those new items without any loss of efficiency. Another thing that we're quite excited about is store friendliness. There's been a lot of work done on this in the last few years in our industry. Let's say you have a particular store that has their crackers and cookies right next to the breakfast cereals. Because automation can control the sequence with which things are picked or put onto a pallet or onto a truck, for that particular store, we can pick the cookies first and then the crackers next, and when we're done with that, we can pull out the breakfast cereals. And what that translates to is when the pallet finally gets to the store, the stocker can take the cereals and put it on the shelf, and then he only has to go 5 feet more to put the crackers up, and another 5 feet after that to put on the cookies. And that, of course, translates to quite a bit of efficiency within the stores. And the final thing that I'd like to share is really coming into its own in the last few years, and this is try to increase the cube utilization within a pallet and sometimes within a truck. Pallet optimization software has really come into its own in the last few years, and by integrating that into our automation, we find that we're able to reduce the amount of air on a pallet, which increases the cube utilization, which has the ability to impact transportation costs. And with uncertain prices in fuel these days and high transportation costs, that's quite a benefit, we think, to the end user.
Well, there's some interesting things going on in the DC. Terry, thank you so much for sitting down with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Terry Krantz, Swisslog, integrating automation in the DC. Thanks for watching.